Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurjagacharya Astotara. Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Astotara Shri Śrīmad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So we'll be reading from the bottom of page 543 tonight. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 7th day of July 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 13 entitled Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. And we're on text 13 at the bottom of page 543. Geyam yat tat pravakshyami yaj gyatpamitam ashnute. Geyam yat tat pravakshyami Yagyatpamitam ashnute. Anadi matparam brahma nasat tan nasaruchite. Anadi matparam brahma nasat tan nasaruchite. Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yagyatpamitam ashnate. Anadimat param brahma nasattan nasaruchyate. Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yagyatpamitam ashnate. Anadimat param brahma nasattan nasaruchyate. Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yad-gatvam-itam ashnute anadimat-param brahma nasattan-nasaruchyate Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yad-gatvam-itam ashnute anadimat-param brahma nasattan-nasaruchyate Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yad-gatvam-itam ashnute anadimat-param brahma nasattan-nasaruchyate Geyam yattat pravakshyami Yad-gatvam-itam ashnute anadimat-param brahma nasattan-nasaruchyate. All right, word by words. Geyam, the knowable, yat, which, tat, that, pravakshyami, I shall now explain. Sorry. Yat, which, gyatva, knowing, amritam, nectar, ashnute, one tastes, anadi, beginningless, matparam, subordinate to me, brahma, spirit, na, neither, sat, cause, tat, that, na, nor, asat, effect, uchate, is said to be. Top of page 544. Oh, it has a different book. All right, you'll be okay in it for now. We're going to hide that book after. Oh, she has a different book. All right, he'll help her. Sorry. Translation. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Okay, she's got another book, so. We're in chapter 13, text 13. Okay? All right. All right, purport. Purport. The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable, first the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of the jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. The Jayate, Mriyate, Va, Vipaschit, Katha Upanishad 1-2-18. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord as the Supersoul is also stated in the Vedic literature, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6:16, to be Pradhana Chaitragya Patir Guneshaha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harir Eva Nanyas Yaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the Supreme Brahman Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So I dare say that most of you probably were a little puzzled by parts of that purport. I was. But I think we can probably suss it out here. So, I shall now explain the knowable. Remember again, refer back to Arjun's 6 questions at the beginning. We can turn to text 1 of this chapter, and what do we find? We find that on page 529. Yes. That's the Sanskrit. Oh, the English. Arjun said, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." So Krishna is now describing this object of knowledge, the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginning and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Now Brahman refers to spirit, and in our own body. Did I do Om Jnana? I must have, right? I do it so automatically, I forget. Brahman, the spirit. Now, what is this phrase that we encountered earlier here? I think it was in this chapter, or maybe in the morning class. Aham Brahmasmi. You remember that? All right, I'll say, you say. Aham Brahmasmi. Okay, now you can probably remember that. It's pretty easy. But there's 3 words there. Aham is I. Brahma is spirit. And Asmi is am. So the syntax is a little dangle. I am spirit. I'm not matter. So this is the famous phrase, you're not that body, you're pure spirit. Now we can understand that intuitively by a little exercise that Krishna hints at in the chapter 2, where his Dehi nosmin yata dehi komaram yovanang jada. There he gives a nice little meditation that anyone can perform if he just tries. He's saying there that just as the spirit soul, the spirit in this body, every one of us has a body, we all have a history. All of us were little babies and we gradually grew up, right? So, every one of those little baby bodies, and then we grow up into a child and on to adolescence and everything. We're conscious of the sensations in those bodies, right? Pain, pleasure, like that. So we ourselves are the spirit that's conscious of the body, things that are going on in our own body, and to a great lesser extent in other people's body. So we're changing. The body is changing. Who can deny it? But the soul remains the same. The soul, the knower, the spirit, the individual spirit. This is actually what Krishna is talking about when he's talking about the kshetra, the field, the body is a field, and the kshetra gya. J-N-A is the word that means knower in Sanskrit. The word G-N-A-N-A, long A, jnana, is knowledge. So you can see the relation between knower, gya, and knowledge, jnana. So that we can each understand that we as knowers remain constant within the body, but our knowledge changes. Sometimes there's pain, sometimes there's pleasure. And then because we're human beings with a big brain, we can know things at a great distance, we can contemplate philosophy, we can do all kinds of things, read poetry, right? That's all object of knowledge on the most subtle plane. But still, we remain the knower, and the things out there are known, beginning with our own body and sensations. So this idea that I am spirit, aham brahmasmi, is central to or basic to all of our progress in spiritual life from then on. So what happens to the spirit? Now, first of all, we say, okay, well, where did I come from? How did I get in this body? Okay, that's another section of the knowledge mentioned in the Gita and explained in more detail in a bigger book we have called the Bhagavatam, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And the basic answer is, we came from another body. We had another experience in previous life, and another one before that, another one before that, back to the ad infinitum. Because the central idea is we are eternal. We were never brought into existence and will never go out of existence. But we'll change our circumstances. We can change very radically. Even in this one life, we can go through so many changes, ups and downs. We can have a dreaded disease, or we can be in great health. So what we're conscious of in terms of the body can change infinitely. But the soul itself doesn't change. And so we're headed to another body. And that's what I say, the normative aspect, the aspect of our Shastra, our scripture, that's meant to give us instruction on how to act so we can get the best possible body. Hare Krishna, welcome. Yeah, please, we have these seats. If you're more comfortable on chairs, you can use the chairs. The curtains will open at 8:15. Yeah, you're welcome to stay or come back. We're having a class on Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Hare Krishna. So the whole idea in this Bhagavad Gita and all the books we have is giving us instruction, giving us advice, what we can do in this lifetime to cultivate a certain consciousness that will give us our best next lifetime. It's just like in this world, aside from Krishna consciousness or anything like that, parents are very concerned that their children get a good education, right? So that they'll be well equipped to live in this world as a healthy, happy, prosperous life. I think most parents, good parents, who care about that. And so therefore we have this whole institution of education from age 5 or 6 up on into college like that. And what's the point of that? The idea is that, well, as you grow up and you finally come to be an adult, you'll be knowledgeable, you'll have the skill, you'll be able to navigate life in this world in a successful way. Otherwise, if you have no education, then you'll be poverty-stricken, who knows, you may become homeless, like that. So that you're making your choice now about your destiny. And it's universally happens all over the world in different cultures. So the same idea is here, but in a more absolute sense, is that you may get this degree, that degree, or be successful in the life, but when you die, when the body is, which is just like a machine, think of it as a temporary machine, just like a car. Eventually it's going to break down. And what is going to determine what your next life is all the things that you've done in this life and the consciousness that you've cultivated, the state of consciousness. Now, for practically all the people, especially in today's age, it's a big jumble of things that they've done and not done, and experiences they had. And since it undoubtedly doesn't attune themselves to the scriptural laws and the rights and the wrongs, then they're, at best they'll get another human body, and they'll have to go through all over again. Now, one of the things of knowledge, we just went through a series of verses, 8 through 12, that spoke about different aspects of knowledge that we have for spiritual development. And what does that mean? It means that if we adopt these aspects of knowledge, then we can have the most successful outcome of our life. And what is that? We won't come back into another body, into a physical body. We'll have a spiritual body which really is eternal. Now, there's a lot to understand about that. We can't go into a small class. But the basic principle is something we can very much understand, and that's in one of our elements of knowledge here, which was right at the end of the second verse, 9. In ninth verse, bottom of page 537, this principle, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Doshanudarshanam, which I'll translate. So I'm thinking that most of the people on this side of the room didn't understand it, and probably most of the people on this side of the room didn't understand exactly what that means. I think Prakash gets it. Janma is birth, Mrityu is death, Jara is old age, and Jara is disease. No, Jara is old age, and Vyadi is disease. So they go in order. Krishna doesn't speak of that in consecutive order. Birth, old age, disease, and death. That's the general order. Of course, it doesn't happen like that. Oftentimes, young people die and everything. But the point is, whatever's born has to die. So this body, which is just a machine, just like every car on the road, is eventually going to be off the road, right? Like they're going to break down and junk it. It may be today, tomorrow, 10 years, 20 years from now. So similarly, that's what's going to happen to our body. And in between, these are sufferings. We forget about birth, but it's not very pleasant either for the child or for the mother, ultimately. So there's a suffering there. But, and then eventually, there's most period where you have good health and life is good, But eventually something happens, an injury, a pandemic, disease, something happens to you where it breaks down, or you just get old, and which means disease of some kind. It may come quickly, it may come depending on your lifestyle, like that. But inevitably it will come. For any machine, it comes, and then that people have no insight into the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. This big abyss is just death, which you don't know about. You try to hope that, especially if you lead a life that's kind of, is full of not such good activities, that's the end. That's no more. But it's not the end. Everything you do, every thought you have, everything that is taken into account. And that's where the other knower of the field is. The God is in every one of our hearts as the super soul. This is a very big. What does he do? He watches, upadrashta, and he's supervising, he's permitting, he's providing intelligence by which we can do what we want to do, or not providing it because we don't deserve to do it. So there's a big role to play there. And at the time of death, everything is taken into account, as I mentioned. Nothing is lost. And we're given another body just suitable to continue and try to fulfill our unfulfilled desires, and also to pay for our sins, that activities which we did are against the law, and also to get rewarded for good things we did. Even without any reference to Bhagavad Gita, if you're a kind person, you like to help others, you give in charity, you sacrifice for others, that goes into your positive bank account, and that comes out in the next lifetime, and you'll have a better situation, be better situated, more prosperous, whatever. So this is what's been going on, time immemorial. So the basic motive or goal in spiritual life in Vedic culture is to break out of this bondage of birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Otherwise, it's shortened as samsara, the suffering. A lot of suffering, and it's not necessary, because in our original state there's no suffering. As spirit, in the spiritual world, there's no physical body or anything else to give us trouble. Everything is completely harmonious there in the kingdom of God. We got out of tune with that, and so we came to this world with this strife and this trouble and this birth, old age, disease, and death, because we're misidentifying ourselves as this body. And it's tragic, because we're eternal, we're full of knowledge, we're full of bliss in our original state, and now we're trapped in a body that we identify with, holy, which is certainly not eternal, not full of knowledge, and certainly not all the time blissful. Right? So we're in an unnatural state. So Krishna is teaching us how to regain our natural state. So now let's go through this purport, which is pretty mysterious, I must say, in certain aspects. The Lord explained the field of activities. That's the body in the different variations. And the knower, that's the knower of the field, this individual soul. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the soul. That's those aspects of knowledge we described, which, it includes a lot of other things that we might not say are knowledge. Humility. That you're not going to find a course in one of the universities around here, Humility 101. It's not like that. And what about that part of knowledge, uninterrupted service unto me? That's not usually part of the curriculum either. So that whole process is a very nice summary of Bhakti Yoga. So now he's beginning to explain the knowable. What's the goal? You remember? Is knowledge and the jnānam, the goal of the knowledge. Not just knowledge for knowledge's sake, but we want to know what's the goal of this knowledge. And that's going to be the super soul. Ultimately it's Krishna. The knowledge of the knower. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the super soul. There's two aspects. Right? Krishna says, I'm also the knower in everybody. One can relish the nectar of life. Now, what is that nectar? That nectar is prema bhakti. That's the ananda that we've been hankering for. We're as spiritual beings, or as living beings, we're trying to do two things, like every other living being out there. And that is to minimize our happiness and distress and pain, and maximize our happiness and pleasure. Right? I mean, it's a basic. We're living entities. But we're frustrated in this material. We can't do it. No matter how hard we try, we can. There's limits to how much we can enjoy, because there's limits to the senses. And sometimes it seems no limits to how much we can suffer. It's just the nature of things, right? So we're frustrated. We're frustrated in that endeavor, but still that we go on, because our nature is to be completely free of all suffering and to be swimming in an ocean of bliss. That's Shangri-La, that's paradise, that's the promised land, kingdom of God. You know, and we've said, yeah, that's real, and we learn about it every day. Open the Krishna book, you know, read the 10th canto of Krishna, of God and His world, and His beautiful, loving relationships with those who serve Him, you know. And it's ultimate. There's no downside. It's called Vaikuntha, the place where there's no anxiety. In the heavenly planets, there's anxiety because it's not permanent. Even if you're able to go to heaven, and there are material heavens, you can live many, many thousands of years, and you don't get old, you don't get disease. In the end, you die, but you know, there's all that. And the enjoyment is much greater than you can find here, but it comes to an end. Krishna describes in the 9th chapter, we had, Chine punne matya lokam vishanti, which means when your piety runs out, when you do good works, you're like putting into the piety bank account, you know, which you can then withdraw from. And if you really do it well and you do it right, you know, you can go to these higher planets. They're still material, but they're much nicer than here. You know, you don't have any heat waves where it gets to be 121 suddenly, you know. And you've been reading about that? This is the whole planet suffering material, you know, karma, bad karma. But even though you can enjoy like anything, it comes to an end as everything else, and you have to fall down again to this world of birth and death, Martya Loka. You can hear it. Sanskrit has so many echoes of English. It's a wonderful language. Martya, mortal, you know, mortician, death. It's about death. Martya Loka, that's where we live. Everything dies, everyone dies. And life, material life, is so much trying to forget about that. Right? Deny or live as if we won't die. There's a nice conversation in the Mahabharata where King Yudhishthira is in the forest. You know about this. And they're in exile. He and his 4 brothers, and his mother, I think, is with him, right? Kunti's with him. And so they're in the forest, and there's no running water, you know, and everyone's really thirsty. So he starts sending his brothers, great brothers, out to find some water. So I forget the order. Does Arjun go first? Maybe Arjun. Bhima goes first? Are they first? Anyway, whatever. They go one after another. The twins go, and they reach a wonderful little reservoir of water, and they're about to take some water and find something to carry some back. And there's a voice in the sky. It says, this is my reservoir. You can't drink any until you answer some questions. And they're so thirsty, they say, who's that? You know. And so they drink, and they fall down unconscious. What happened to Nakul and Sahadev? You know, Arjun, go find him. So he goes out there, he sees him lying unconscious, you know, he says, okay, well, let me get a drink of water first, and I'll revive. And there's the voice in the sky, don't drink. It's my reservoir, you have to answer some questions. Arjun's a big Kshatriya, who are you? You challenge me, I'm thirsty, boom, falls unconscious. Next, the 4th brother, Bhima, big, powerful Bhima, you know. No one's going to stop him. He comes across his brothers, they're unconscious. He says, oh, I'm going to drink some water and revive them. Don't drink. Forget it, you know, boom, down he goes. So finally Yudhishthira goes out, and I guess Mother Kunti's waiting there. And he's known as Dharma personified, means that he's very religious. And when he's told that you can't drink this water, it belongs to me, he says, okay, yes, start asking the questions. So he doesn't drink, even though he's super, super thirsty. So there's a whole series of questions, which I don't know, unfortunately. They're all fascinating. But the one that is most quoted, what is the most amazing thing in this world? And the answer is, ahanyahani bhutani gachanti yamalayam sheshakstavanamichanti kimaschayamatakparam. Now it's interesting that it's Yamaraj who's asking these questions, who happens to be Yudhishthira's father, you know, his actual father. And he's the Lord of Dharma. He's known as Dharmaraj. So this verse talks about his own abode. What he says is there, Yudhishthira says, day after day, thousands and millions of human beings are being dragged off to the abode of Yamaraj for judgment. It's no mystery. People are dying all the time. And yet those who are left are, yes, it's a shock to perform a funeral, but they don't live in such a way that they understand that this is going to happen to me. It's just like, I heard Prabhupada talk about this verse. Yeah, my brother died, my father died, my grandfather died, but that happened to them. You live in such a way as if you're going to live forever, ever, which is crazy. It's just like the rabbit, the lion's coming at him, no way of getting away. All right, this is my solution. Put my head in the ground, to try to forget that I'm going to die in 5 seconds. At least I have 5 seconds. In other words, it's foolish. As human beings, we should plan for the inevitable future, and if possible, okay, we're going to have to suffer the death, but make it our last, rather than go around. So there's a universal program. You may have heard, it became news because of COVID, that the Kumbh Mela happened. Kumbh Mela, huge crowds, millions of people gather at the confluence of the Ganges and the Yamuna. And there's a third subtle river there called the Saraswati. And so it's Triveni. Notice the word Veni, veins. The rivers are said to be the veins of the world, the earth. They carry nutrients and they carry water like that. So the Triveni is a spot in Prayag or Allahabad. Millions of people gather because in January, when it's freezing cold, because it's in northern India, and they spend days there, and leading up to one special time when it's very auspicious to bathe in the river, because you'll get liberation, mukti, from birth and death. So you'll find old people, making their way to that thing. But here, there's a pandemic going on, and so people, they say, should it be allowed? They canceled Rath Yatra last year, and they canceled this year too, I think, because it's just huge crowds. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people, in Puri or in Kumbh Mela, everyone's crowded in. Perfect, super spreader event. They didn't cancel it, and sure enough, many people came down. India now they're starting to recover a little bit. But so for mukti, just so they'll get free from this birth and death. So that's the most amazing thing, and Krishna consciousness teaches us to be sober about it. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Anudarshanam means to see and be conscious and aware and integrate into your life this knowledge that yes, we're going to have to die, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to avoid the next death. And that's one of the benefits of Bhakti Yoga. Ultimately, it's a side benefit. But this, and how to get to that point of understanding how to act and acting on it by cultivating the understanding of these answers to Arjun's questions. So, by knowledge of the knower, that's us and the super soul, both the soul and the super soul, one could relish nectar of life, and that is bhakti rasa, part of which is the understanding, take birth again, but that's a small part ultimately. But real pleasure that's not based on the limitations of the senses. See, this is one of our limitations in this world, is that because we've decided to leave the spiritual world, where everything is centered on God and service to God, and that's the pleasure, we've exiled into this spot, and what we're left with is sense gratification, which is gross and subtle. Meaning that some gratification is just in the mind, which is really big, like entertainment, and reading material novels and all these different things. That's a subtle sense, but it can be, very attractive. And what to speak of eating and seeing all these things, and that's part of that's what we're taking to be real pleasure. But it's not. It's fool's gold because it has a beginning and an end. Every material pleasure, based on the senses have their limitations, the body has limitations. So it has a beginning and end. And therefore the wise don't take their pleasure there. This is a verse that we should know from the 5th chapter. Yehi sangsparjaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantamanta kontaya nateshu remate Buddha. Buddha means the intelligent. Notice the word Buddha, it's like Buddha. Those who are truly intelligent, they don't aspire for or take part in sense gratification, because it's the source of misery. We know that extreme sense gratification is, I mean, just eating too much. You know, that yes, there's a pleasure there, temporary, but it's, you know, you get indigestion, you can get sick, you decrease your lifespan. It can create havoc in your life if that's one of your pleasures, right? Isn't it a sin in the Bible? Gluttony, right? So that's simple. But then, you know, we have drugs and we have all these different things. These are all sense gratifications that are maybe very attractive in the beginning, but in the end, they obviously produce so much misery. But the fact of the matter is that anything that we try to enjoy, even if it's supposedly wholesome, that also produces misery because it induces us to do it again and again and again, and we're planting desire seeds in our mind that eventually the body becomes unable to enjoy. We get another body to keep enjoying. In other words, the misery of birth, old age, and disease, and death are caused by a sense gratification. This is spoken of by Rishabdev. I won't give you the Sanskrit, but that's what he says.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol, not yet. Haribol,
okay,
a few minutes.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And so, but we can come to relish nectar, which means immortality. Nectar. Another one of these are interesting words. This one is not Sanskrit. It comes from the Greek. Nec, as in necrophilia, necrotic, death. Tar, as in tarine, namaste tarine, deliver. Deliver us from death. That's the word. The English word nectar means that. Amrita, no death. Mrita, mrityu, mortician. Interesting. So, how to become delivered from death and into the nectar of life, always enjoying. It's practically inconceivable to always be in a state of bliss. Sthai bhava, there's even the word for it. Steady ecstasy. That's what it means. That's our natural state. So it's so alien. Are you kidding? I mean, there's nothing like that. Nothing like that in our material experience. But we're given assurance by our acharyas that it's real. So, the living entity is eternal. That's explained. I just was talking about that. And we're as eternal as the Lord is. And in the Vedic literatures, the super soul is also stated to be, in the Sanskrit, the chief knower of the body, master of the modes of nature. So we want to become well acquainted with that super soul. And that super soul is an expansion of Krishna, who's the all-attractive personality of Godhead. I was studying a very nice verse. I never memorized it, or I knew about it before. And it's something that I think you can all get into because it's about the name Krishna, which is central. We're Hare Krishnas, as you probably know. There's our mantra. Krishna appears 4 times there. So what is this Krishna? What does it mean? You know, Sanskrit is such a beautiful language. Every syllable counts. So this verse is about taking apart the name Krishna, and why does that indicate the absolute truth? So he says, Krishna Bhutavachaka Sabdo. Yeah. Krishna Bhuvachaka Sabdo Nashta Nirvati Vachaka. Give me a second, I got it. Tayor Aikyam Param Brahma Krishna Ityavidiyate. Thank you, Krishna. So, what does that mean? The word Krish, the very syllable Krish, means all attractive, the attractive element, you see? And Nash, means Ananda, bliss. So you join them together, Tayor Aikyam, you take these two, and you make them one, and you end up with the Param Brahma. We were just talking about Brahma, right? Aham Brahmasmi. The Supreme Spirit, the Supreme Reality, the Absolute Truth, which is known as by the name of Krishna. So it's interesting. There's 2 things. One is the attractiveness of Krishna, and one is the actual pleasure of just being Krishna conscious, serving Krishna. So Krishna. Now, there's another word. That the other verse I word is about Rama, the name Rama. This is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is Shiva speaking to Parvati, explaining why he chants the name Rama. Rama Rameti Rameti. You heard this one before? Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Ramo Manorama. Oh yes.
Sahasranama
Yes, Sahasra, thank you. Sahasra namabis tasya Rame Ramo. Oh, Rama Nama Varanana, right? Yeah, she knows. Varanana means you with the beautiful face. This is Shiva speaking to Parvati, speaking to his wife. Oh, beautiful faced one, you know. I chant Rama, Rama, Rama. Rama, Rameti, Rameti. It means I'm saying Rama, Rama, Rama. It's chanting. Which is, in this way, I enjoy Rame, the name Rama, which is so delightful for the mind, Manorama, you know. One name of Rama is like chanting 1,000 names of Vishnu, because it's a Vishnu Sahasranam, you know. And one name of Krishna is like chanting 3 names of Rama, you know. So that, in other words, the potency is very great. So this is the essence of our Hare Krishna mantra. Now Hare is Radharani, is vocative. It's like I would say, oh Dimitri, please get me some water. That's vocative. Don't get me some water. But so we're saying, oh Radharani, you know, oh Krishna, it's all vocative. So the hara becomes hare. And what is this hara? Why hara? It means she steals away, you know. What does she steal away? The mind of Krishna. She steals Krishna's heart. But she's also taking away our sins. She's taking away our mind also and attracting us to Krishna. So really, Radharani is love for Krishna personified. So you can see how auspicious this mantra is. We're meditating on the object, which is the love for Krishna, and we're allowing ourselves to be attracted by Krishna and join in the pleasure of service to Krishna, because the Sanskrit words are not different from what they mean. The name Krishna, and this is totally inconceivable, you know, is identical with Krishna. You know, Prabhupada doesn't even use that word non-different, you know, but you're actually associating with God by just vibrating the name like that. Now, of course, the state of our mind and how we're doing it determines how we're experiencing that. There are also people chanting Hare Krishna who don't believe in God. You can do that, you know. It's popular. I can get an audience. I can make some money. I'll learn how to chant nicely, play the harmonium. I can do that, you know. And the people who have a business of that, you know. We said, don't listen to them. He said, be careful. Sanatana Goswami says, oh, you know what? No, it's my brain isn't working like it used to. Avaishnavo mukodgirnam putam hadikatam mitam shabandam naiva kartavyam sarpochistam yatapaha. You get the first word and it kind of flows, you know. So, Avaishnavo mukodgirnam. Mukha is the mouth. Udgirna means uttered. From the mouth of an Vaishnav, a non-Vaishnav, one should never hear any Krishna Katha, which is so purifying. Putam hadikatamitam. It's nectar. But be careful, you know, and it may sound like nectar, but it's like, you know what it's compared to? When you get a pot of milk and a poisonous snake gets in there, you know, and drinks some of it, and then it slithers out. The milk looks the same, it tastes the same, doesn't have the same effect, right? It'll kill you. So the state of the purity of the heart of the person who's chanting makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. That's why we should all listen to Prabhupada chanting, you know, in his speaking, because there's a subtle effect that is unique with the pure devotee speaking about or chanting. So back to our verse here. All right, before I continue, Dhanavari?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, you have a question?
Yes, I do have 2 small questions. Very, very interesting, nice discussion. So one, you mentioned, Prabhu, that in heaven, in Swargaloka, is better than here because there is no birth, death, old age, disease.
Well, there is death, unfortunately. You're talking about Swargaloka.
Yeah, death, but they live very
They live much better. Yeah, much more pleasant, right? Much longer. Yeah. Longer
and better. So is there a seva bhakti there? That's my first question. Because some devtas, I heard, they want to come on Mrityulok here because I read they don't get it, or why do they want to come here?
Yeah, well, you know, they're obviously not in the other place, you know. So Indra's a devotee, as we learned. but tends to lose it, right? In other words, it's so nice up there, he's in charge. So there's service, but you're not going to find the Sankirtan movement up there, because if you're in the Sankirtan movement here and you succeed, you go back to the spiritual world. You don't go to heaven. Heaven is for people who want to enjoy, but you want to do it in a pious way. In other words, you realize that you have to perform sacrifices and do the mantras and worship the gods and so forth. And your aspiration is to go to the heavenly planet. It's very difficult because you have to have very precise. You imagine if we had to chant all these mantras precisely to go back to Godhead? Everyone would leave. I don't chant them properly, But Krishna, he's looking for the bhava. He's looking for your heart. He's not looking for how much ghee did you offer and, did you say the mantras perfectly. It's all a question of the heart with Krishna. What do you really sincerely want to do? If your heart is there, then he gives you the intelligence by which you can do it properly. So it's all, this is why, so that's Lord Chaitanya's movement. Doesn't matter, where you've been, what you've done, who you are. Just come and join the Hare Krishna chanting. Get into the flow. And that's, you find you get absorbed in the sound and you're purified. There's so many verses like that in the Bhagavatam about the sacrifice of chanting as opposed to material sacrifice. One of the most famous verses is uttered by Devahuti, the mother of Kapila Dev. In the course of his explaining the science of bhakti to her, she says, "Oh, how wonderful it is! Aho bata shapatroto gariyan yajjigagre vartate namatubhyam te pustaposte juhavu sasnaraya brahmanuchu nama gunanti yete." Aho means aho. Whoa, how wonderful! It's not. You don't need to read the translation. Aho bata, how really wonderful it is that even in the dog eaters, in other words, the lowest of society, if they happen to be chanting your name on the tip of their tongue, it doesn't matter, the purity, but they're chanting somehow. Shopachoto gadiyan, how glorious. Jigragve vartate namatubhyam. Then this person or persons in previous life must have performed all kinds of austerity, studied the Vedas, visited all the holy places, and done so many other wonderful things. In other words, what they're doing now by chanting your name, even impurely, is the result of their previous activity. It's the culmination of these other activities. So everything devolves back into this, the Sankirtan movement, chanting. That's our only hope. And Lord Chaitanya came to teach us, yes, you just take shelter of that and you'll reach the highest goal, way beyond heaven. Don't even worry about heaven. As far as, birth and liberation, that's taken care of. That's a side benefit. What you really experience is this ever-expanding ocean of bliss. Anandam buddhivardhanam. In this Shikshastika he's saying. Padipadam purnamitas vadanam. At every moment, every step, you can taste nectar at every moment. Complete nectar. Just the opposite of sense gratification, where you have to take so many steps, drive so many miles, make so much money, make so much arrangement, so you can enjoy a few minutes of sense gratification. And then it's back to the minds and back to the... Just the opposite. But here, for free, chant Hare Krishna, chant the holy name, purify your existence, and then at every moment, you can be experiencing Krishna's presence and your service to Him. So this is the alternative we have. And by understand... You understand? So
yes, Prabhu, so that means all this birth, death, disease, old age is, even though we have to go through, this place is better than heaven, you are saying,
totally.
Right?
Earth, with the advent of the Lord Chaitanya and his movement, is way better than heaven. And you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and you can see the pleasure that they're enjoying. Whether it's, Advaita Acharya or Sarvabhauma or Lord Chaitanya himself or the masses and masses of the people who are chanting and, Lord Chaitanya. I've been reading it again. It never gets old, And you can see that he's Krishna. He brought the greatest down to us. We just have to, surrender to it and take part in it.
So that means, Prabhu, if we have to born again and go through, even though we don't want to come back here, but we will have to, especially myself, I'm not pure, I'm nowhere close So if I have to come back again and again, but if I get the Sankirtan or Bhakti, then it's okay, right? Like I don't have to worry about it.
You don't worry about it. You know, there's an evolution of desire. Bhakti is all about that. It's evolution of your desire from material to spiritual. But there's a process, and along the way, you're very eager for liberation. Otherwise, why would Krishna say Jamma Mrityu Juda Dvadi Dukkha Doshana Darshanam? One of the foundations is, all right, this is very sobering. You know, I don't want to come back again. Let me chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Ram Ram. You know, so you're chanting, and you'll be chanting for liberation. That's fine. Somehow or other, chant whatever makes you chant. You know? That's okay. We're praying to Krishna, please engage me eternally in your service. Take me out of this material world. But in the process of chanting, if you follow it right, you become purified. The chanting itself and all other processes of bhakti become so sweet that you're not even thinking about liberation anymore. You're following Lord Chaitanya's prayer. We should know this Shikshastika. I think you should. Nadanang nadanang nasundarim kapitam vajagadish kamaye mama janmani janmani shude bhavata bhaktira hoita kitvahi. Wealth, women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. So there's no question of he's praying for liberation there. He's praying for pure bhakti. And if we really achieve that state, and then we'll forget about all these other things. You know, that's why, you know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, let me take any birth, even as an insect, as long as it's in the house of a devotee, so I can hear the katha sitting on the wall, you know. So he's expressing that desire that it will be beyond that. But by that time, it won't matter anymore. What is Bilva Mangal Thakur's famous verse? We learned about him, right? We heard this amazing story. He was so entrapped, you know, he was a great Brahmin, but he was entrapped by a prostitute. So the prostitute turned out to be his Vartma Pradarshika guru. You remember I mentioned that? You know, the one who shows the way. And in his Krishna Karnamrita, she's the first one he honors. Chintamane Jayati Somagiri Guru Me. He had an official guru, Somagiri, but the first one he mentions is Chintamani, his Vartma Pradarshika guru. And then his Shiksha guru, you know what Shiksha guru is? Bhagavān. Krishna himself is his instructing guru. Yeah. So then he has his verse about liberation where he says, Bhakti stayis chadatada bhagavan nidhi sad daive nanak padati divya kishora murti. Mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman dharmartha kamakata yaksamayak patiksha. My dear Lord, if someone is fixed in pure devotion to you, then they'll get the result of that. You know, which is what? Liberation? No. He says, it's simply a vision of your beautiful adolescent form. Real darshan of Krishna, right? Bhakti Sthirata Bhagavan Nidhi said, Daivedanak Palati Divya Kishore. Palati means fruit. Divya Kishore, your divine adolescent form. And as far as Mukti is concerned, she's standing by the door with the Anjali. Anjali is a mudra. Basically says, how can I serve you? You see? Whereas the prayer, you find, you know, in some churches, it's like this. There's nothing in there, you know. It's called pointing to me. Please give me this, please give me that. And this is, let me give you this flower. That's why Pushpanjali. Pushpanjali means I got a flower in here, and I'm going to offer it to God. So Mukti is over there with the Anjali, and she's saying, how can I serve you? You know, rather than, you know, go to Kumbh Mela, you know, bathe in the freezing water, you know, and then you get Mukti. And this, you know, please, can I, you know. So this is Bilva Mangal Thakur's statement about that. So yes, let's whatever impels us to chant, go with that. If we're scared of birth and death, hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But in the mature state, we'll come to Lord Chaitanya's program of not caring about it. All right.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Very, very nice.
Hare Bol, Dhanavai.
Thank you.
I'm assuming Vijay is not with us tonight. Yeah, we would have heard him.
Problem.
We would have heard him by now. Anyway. Okay, so it's time to adjourn so we can get ready for the kirtan. I said I wouldn't be there, but I see I was counting on Alex, but he must be cooking and doing something else. So I'll stay with you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. So now we have a little ceremony.